Welcome everybody to part 2 of Intro to JavaScript with P5JS, create impactful media art. And actually in part 2, we're gonna be creating actual impactful media art. Hopefully by the end of the part 2, you all can make a combination of visual and audio and into your coding. So I'm excited for that. I hope you're also excited for that. We're going to start today with the beginning of how to make our code more efficient. To this point, we've been having code that is been very simple. Well, not simple, but it's been not the best efficient code. And we learn about conditionals, and we're going to start working on tools, integrating tools to make the code more efficient and also allow us to have longer code, but be able to compress it. So it'll be a more complex code, but also it's going to be more succinct. I'm going to share a code on to start. I'm going to share a code, my first code on Slack. So I'm going to put it on Slack, and you all can copy paste it into your editor. So right now I place the code. I just copy pasted this code into to Slack. So if you can, go ahead and select it and then put it on the editor. And of course, delete what is on the editor, make a new sketch. So make new sketch, delete what is in the window on the writing window, and then paste the code that it was on Slack. And make sure you don't bring things like this that I just brought from Slack, and it will give me an error. And then you can click save. So let me know on Slack or on the chat when you have your code on the editor. And if anybody needs help, please let me know and I can clarify for you. Okay, we have 2 people who have been able to put it in the code on the code editor. Oh, okay, somebody just let me know they're done. So we are now 4 people. Let's see if anybody else gets the courage to try it today. And if you are already there, go ahead and run it. If you have it, go ahead and run it. Okay, well, thank you for the ones that volunteer to run it. So now I'm gonna run it and we're gonna see what it does. And right now it's just creating 2 dots, blue dots and purple dots. That's all it's doing. And we're gonna work into making this look better. Right now it looks incomplete, so the class today is to complete it. But right now, the challenge for all of you who are able to run this code is to change the color of one of the dots to another color, or change instead of a circle, you can add a rectangle, and then share with me the code. So you can go here, whilst you change something on the code, you can go here, file, share, and get this link, any of this link, and put it on Slack. And see, awesome. I like that color. Yeah, awesome. That's like an apple, a green apple color. That's great. I really like that one. It looks great with the black background. So I would just leave it like that. Okay, awesome. So you change the border, change the color. That's awesome. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Anybody else has the courage to share their code? See, you can see the stroke will change 200. That's the color. So that's the color of the stroke, 200, which is gray. And the stroke weight is 9. So that's what I think this one. And this one, I can go here and get the code. And she, the color, she changed here the color for this circle right here. So if anybody else can share it, please. So this is a good example how to modify the code to make it yours. So you can customize it so the way you want it to look like. That's a great way to test your code to get comfortable learning how to work on P5.js. So great job. Great job for all of you who try it. And if you haven't tried it, please, there will be other opportunities for all of you. So, and if you can send it to me after the class too. Talk about the code that we just shared and that we're working on. So right now we have two circles, but this is incomplete. We would like to have more circles. And the code right here says a fill, so which is the color of the first series of circles. And then this is an ellipse. And this is the location. So this is the first ellipse, which is, you can only see half of it. And the second ellipse is the next one. Then you have this code for the pink. So a question for all of you, how do I add another circle to the right? So if I want to put another circle here on the right of the last blue circle, and another one here at the left, and another one, and another one, how should I do that? So what should we put on line 17 if we want another blue circle to the right? So how do we add one more? Yeah, we're gonna have a for loop, but before that, for the people who don't know what a for loop is, without the loop, what should we put on line 17? So how do we add another circle? Exactly, so we can put another ellipse function. What's gonna be the difference between the one that is 17 and the one 16? What parameters, argument should we change? Exactly, so we have to change this. So the next one, so is every 50, the X, the vertical is gonna stay the same, but the X, like you just said, so it's gonna be 50 plus 50 is 100. And then it will be another one. And then if we want to add another one, we need to add, we're gonna change, also we're gonna have to change the X. So it'll be 100 times plus 50. And then we add another one. So all these ellipses are identical except for the X. Okay, so have that in mind. So the first thing, how can we make succinct? We know that all the ellipses are gonna be the same value. So you see here, they're the same value, except this is moving, incrementing from 0, 50, 100, 150. So how can we make this more efficient? Anybody knows, have an idea? Excuse me, no, before we do the for loop, we had to do something on this. to make it into one line of code, because the 100 is not changing, the 25 is not changing, this 25 is not changing, but the X value is changing. So remember, we had a class about variables. So yeah, so plus 50. But before we do that, yeah. Exactly. So we have to create a variable first. So that variable is gonna have to increment. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is introduce a variable. Don't write this. I'm gonna share you the correct code yet. So just look what I'm doing, and I'm gonna share with you the code. So this is for the first ellipse. So now we're just gonna have to put X here, and all this can be deleted. Okay, but the X has to be, remember, what else did you guys said? What has to happen to the X? Increment. So it's gonna be X plus 50. So let's see if it works. So I declare the variable here, and then I'm gonna put the incremental here and see if it works. Well, it didn't work. Why it didn't work? So let me check. Oh, I know why it didn't work, because this has to be placed here. I didn't give it a value. So we're gonna start here, X L equals 0. So now we have one, but it's moving, and we don't want that one. We want to stay still. So we're gonna have to put another one here, and then the other one here, and then another one here. And this is gonna create, and it's still moving because I did something. I'm not supposed to move. Oh, I know why. So let's try this. X equals 0. There it is. So I couldn't put it outside because it was moving. So you have to put the assign a value inside the function draw. So anytime it runs, it's 0. So it's puts here is X0. So this ellipse is the first one. Then it's gonna increment, but it hasn't looped. This function draw is gonna loop because it's an animation. So we're drawing this one first on line 19, which is the first circle. Then we add 50, we draw the next one, which is the second one. Then we add 50 and we add this one. So as you can see right now, if we want to make it across the canvas, how many more ellipse? How many times I have to repeat line 22 and 23? Exactly. So that's why we have to use a for loop. That is a real good application for. Yeah, somebody's asking, it would be faster to make a variable. Well, what's happening is, I want you to see this. So this is a local variable. So we're doing local variable. Now, you can see, because that was the error I have. Let's make this a global variable, and you're gonna see what's happening. And this is because it's P5JS, okay? The way P5JS work, because remember, it's an animation application. So what happens when you make it a global variable? And this is very interesting because it shows you how different P5JS is to other what is so unique to P5.js? So what happened when I move it? When I make X a global variable? Anybody notice what's happening? And this is what it makes P5.js so fascinating. Because remember, the function draw is what? It draws not fast. It draws, it goes, it repeats how long? Forever.
Yeah, we're
It
not given
repeats forever until I stop. It's gonna keep repeating. It's gonna keep repeating the code forever. That's because this is P5.js. So what it's doing, and that's why we get that moving. If we don't want it to move, we have to make the variable a local variable. So that's how you discover things. So maybe that's what you want. You want things to move. And that's how you create art or animation art when you discover these singularities. So that's a great conversation. I'm glad we explained that. And then, so now we see there is a need for a for loop. So we're going to change it to a for loop. And I'm going to give you the code for the for loop. So, so this is going to be better if we replace we're gonna put here some kind of loop that the loop is gonna assign, and I'm just gonna write it down and then I'll give you the code. But this is the explanation of the code. The code is gonna say for conditions, condition repeat. So that's basically like the synonym of a for loop. So this is an example of a for loop. So if you haven't seen what a for loop is, this is an example of a for loop. This for loop is going to declare and assign the value to a counter. So I, which we're going to use X, or you can use I. I is very common to use in for loops. So it's basically a counter. You're going to do the loop so many times, and the I is going to count, or the X is going to count. It's going to change the value. Then we have to have an exit condition. If we don't have an exit condition, we create a forever loop, which it means that computer is gonna run that forever and it's never gonna stop. And then you have to do control, delete, and to break the code. And sometimes the computer just goes crazy. And then here is the increment. So this takes what we were trying to do with all these lines here. The for loop is going to do it in in one line. So in this loop, you're going to, the output is console log is going to print it to the console. How many times? Anybody knows? How many times you're going to print? So it's going to start with 0, and it's going to print 0, then 1, then what? Like, you don't have to run this, just guess. So this is the output is going to be it's going to be 0, then it's going to be 1, and then what? Just by looking. So for here is I is equals 0 is the starting point. Then it's going to check the condition is I less than 9, continue. Then it's gonna, this is gonna happen after this command gets executed. So it's gonna print to the console, and then it's gonna add one more. So the first that it's gonna get printed, the first value is gonna get printed 0. It's gonna check, is 0 less than 9? Yes. So it's gonna print to the console 0, and then it's gonna increment the I to 1. And then it's gonna say I is 1, is less than 9, print increase. So what would be the next output? Anybody knows? I see people typing, so that makes me feel better. So it's gonna be 2. Yeah, somebody put it on Slack. Thank you. So yeah, excellent. So it's gonna be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because at 8, it stops. So that's the exit condition. 8 is less than 9. It adds 1 to 9, but when it goes to check, 9 and less than 9 is false, so it stops. So that's the exit condition of the output of the for loop. So let's try it, this version. I'm going to put it in the on Slack. No, is this the version I wanted to do? No. So the version I have here is yeah, so this is the for loop, and then I'm gonna leave this without for loop, and then you guys gonna do the for loop. So that's the idea. So for the second one, you guys are gonna make your own for loop. So I put the code, it's a long code. So you see the difference between using the for loop and then not using the for loop. Why is so efficient to do the for loop? So go ahead and copy paste, and I didn't watch out for this one didn't turn into there. Those little forward slash they get mixed up, and then you get an error. So while you do that, go ahead and put it on your editor. So I just want to show you. This is I made 2 variables, one for the top circle, one for the bottom circle. So X and X2, and then this is the location for the this is the for loop for the top circles, and you see I have to create, I have an I and an X. So the X, it goes on the location on the horizontal, and the I is a counter. And then you have the bottom is gonna draw all the circles in the bottom, and later on I want you to try to make the second one into write the loop for the second one. So and the other thing is this is the condition for the loop. So this expression, first you declare and assign a value to the I, then you check the statement if it's true or false. If it's true, you're gonna execute the code inside. If it's false, you exit the loop. And then after you execute the loop, the code inside, you have a counter, and the counter is gonna increase. And you always have to have an exit condition, otherwise you will run into a forever loop, which is really inconvenient. And if you want to know how the counter works, I have placed here a counter so you can see how it works. So this is just a simple counter. For example, for this loop up here, less than 5. And this is how the I increments and how it checks. So this is something you can do by hand. Okay, so for example, that's a great question. So this is, for example, this is the loop. So I have I less than 5 on this here, this ellipse. So the first I is 0. So the 0 is going to compare to 5. If it's, since 0 is less than 5, then it's true. And then it's going to draw the ellipse. And then it's going to add 50 to the X. Then it's after it does that, it's going to add 1 to the I. So now the I is 1. Okay, so then it's going to check against the condition I less than 5 is true, increment, or execute the code, increment. Then the I is 2. Is I is less than 5 is true, execute the code, increment, and so on and so on and so on. And then when you get to 5, is 5 less than 5 false, then you end. And you don't execute the code at that point. You execute, the last time you execute the code is at 4, when I is 4. So I hope that answered the question. Yeah, when the condition fail here, like it did here, it exits. It doesn't execute the code. So you have to be very strategic on this number, on this 5. Because sometimes you're gonna go over and sometimes you're gonna go under. So it's, you have to do be very strategic about that. So let's do the code that to see how it works. And you should have run it. Maybe you run it already. I haven't run it yet. So I'm gonna run it. If you haven't run it, please go ahead and run it with the for loop. How to make a for loop again. Yeah, I can show you how to make a for loop again. And why it didn't work. This was supposed to work. See, it draw this one, but so let's, what part of the for loop do you want me to check? So let me fix this one, why it's not running. Maybe you guys know why. So this one is X is 50. That's what happened. I tried this many, many times and then it's not gonna work when I want it to work. So let me check. So let's troubleshoot this one. Maybe you all, you know better than me. So we have to build the for loop. There it is. So why is, no, the other one wasn't working. Oh, I know why. I know why. So, okay. So can you let me know why the code I share? I just share a code and there is something wrong. Well, there is nothing wrong. There is something off. Anybody, how many pink circles you got? See, I put tricks. I put tricks here to show you. And then I get trick on my own tricks. So that's what happens. So we have here a for loop. So if you still have problem with the for loop, just pay attention and I'll repeat it again. But this is very important and this helps a lot. So on line 21, all of you run this code. Is a code that is on Slack. Did you all run it? How many blue circles, or I mean the top circle, did you get?
Half the circle.
So one, and then at the bottom you have all the circles. Correct? So is that for everybody? I don't know if people already knows. So we talk about the condition. So look at the line 21 and read it out loud. Read it out loud, read the condition. So the way you read it aloud, all of you. I'm just gonna give you like 2 seconds to read aloud to yourself and see if you notice what is off. And then I'm gonna read it aloud.
1, I think, right?
Yes. So what happens if it's less than 1? How many loops is gonna do? No, it's gonna be the 1 because I is equals 0. So it's gonna execute and then it's gonna say, is 1 less than 1? No, and it quits. See, that's how you have to think. I is equals to 0. Is 0 less than 1? Yes, execute code. Now increase 0 plus 1, 1. 1 is less than 1? No, quit and stop. So that's how the loop works. So let's change this. So the way to read it, I'm gonna read it aloud now, and I'm glad you all notice it. It says for let I equal 0, so I is equal 0, condition I needs to be less than 1, execute code, now increase by 1. And then you say, is I less than 1? Yes, and that's why I always do this. This is something I learned when I took my first coding class. Do this little here, this little grid. So in this first case, it was I is equals 0. Is I less than 1 true? Increase by 1. I mean, here you execute code, increase by 1. Then you go, I is now 1. Is 1 less than 1? No, false, quit. Don't execute the code. So now we're gonna increase it. So you don't have to do that, but I'm gonna increase it to 3 and see what happens. And this is normal. When you are learning, you wanna increase this. If you are not comfortable, you don't know right away what the number should be, you should test it out because you don't wanna get too short or too far away from the canvas. So now you're 3, so okay. We need to go a little farther. And then let's try 5. Well, you're not quite there yet. So then we can count. We already have here, you know, an indication how many circles we have to have here. So you can count the ones at the bottom or count the code that we have here. So if you count, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So let's try 12. So we're still 1 short, right? So what will be the right condition? Yeah, it's awesome, 13. And sometimes you will have to do this. You will have to put 5 and see how much closer you are. It's just, sometimes it just happens. And it's good to do it so you get a sense. If you are not comfortable using loop, like somebody said, can you explain the loop? The best way to do it is you test it out, that you yourself go and put 1, like what we just did, 1 and then 5, and so it gets ingrained in your mind. Also, this is what the loop is doing. So at the bottom, you're gonna see that's exactly what the loop is doing, except the loop is doing it in less lines. And that's what we want in code, is make a code that is more efficient and is more elegant. This is what it's called, is elegant. It's easy to read, it's succinct, it does the work, and with very few lines. Now that we know it's 13, we know the condition, the exit condition where we stop the loop is when we reach the canvas. So you have to design your exit condition. In the way in English, if we're gonna draw circles until we reach the end of the canvas horizontally. So that's our exit condition. It's not we're gonna draw 13 circles, it's not we're gonna draw 5 circles. No, we're gonna draw circles all the way to the end of the canvas and no more. That's the exit condition. So for X less than the width of the canvas, keep drawing. So if the circle is, so this is the width. This is the width of the canvas. So if we have circles here, we have to keep drawing. So if we have circles beyond the canvas, we have to keep drawing. We have to stop drawing. So outside of the canvas, stop drawing. Inside of the canvas, keep drawing. So that's the condition that we need to comply. So how do we write this statement in a for loop? And one of the things, I'm going to give you a little reminder. We have a built-in function called width. Remember, there is a built-in function called width and height. So we can replace this 13 with one of the functions. So that means that you can draw the canvas, you can give the canvas any dimensions and you don't have to count anymore because it's gonna stop by the end of the canvas, before the canvas ends. So that gives us more freedom in our design because we don't have to be counting how many circles. So what do you think? What we can use a built-in function here, so we don't have to put 13. It could be width or height. Width, oh, very good, thank you. So I'm going to change it to width and you're going to see it changes color. And I'm going to share the code with you on Slack, so don't type it yet. And now I'm going to run it and I'm going to get the same thing, but now I don't have to count. So isn't that wonderful? Now you don't have to count because now you have a code that is going to stop. It's not going to go further than the width because the I happens to count. So the width, we have it set up as 600. So the I is gonna move all the way to 600. So that's very clever. That's another way to do it. Because the way the pixels work, you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 600. So that's the way you can do the next one, the pink codes. And next week, we're gonna do the while loop.